A single mom brings soup to her elderly neighbor on a freezing winter night. But the man who answers the door is hiding a secret that could change everything. She thinks it's just kindness, a warm meal for someone alone. But inside that creaky old house is a grandson no one in town has seen in years, and he's guarding a fortune he doesn't want anyone to know about. What starts as a simple act of compassion turns into whispers, rumors, and a scandal that could tear her family apart. Now the whole town wants answers, and someone's willing to twist the truth to get them. Why would a man with more money than the town's ever seen hide it from everyone? And when the truth comes out, will it save her, destroy everything she loves? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The sleet tapped against the kitchen window like tiny fingers as Lily Hart stirred the pot of chicken and stars soup. Steam rose in gentle wisps, carrying the comforting aroma of herbs and vegetables through her small but tidy kitchen. She'd made this soup 100 times before. It was her mother's recipe, perfect for cold winter evenings like this one. "Maddie, honey, can you get your boots on?" Lily called out to her daughter, who was sprawled on the living room floor with her coloring books. "We need to check on Miss Eleanor." Maddie looked up from her artwork, her brow furrowed with concern. "Is Miss Eleanor sick?" "I'm not sure, sweetie." Lily carefully poured the hot soup into a large thermos. "But I haven't seen her lights on all day, and in this weather we should make sure she's okay." The wind rattled the kitchen window, making Lily grateful for their snug little house. It wasn't much, just a simple 2-bedroom rental with faded wallpaper and creaky floors, but it was home. She thought about Eleanor alone, next door in her big Victorian house, probably trying to save on heating bills again. "Can I bring her my new picture?" Maddie asked, already gathering her papers. "The one with the butterflies?" "That's thoughtful of you," Lily smiled, grabbing her daughter's winter coat from the hook by the door. "Miss Eleanor loves your drawings." As Lily helped Maddie into her coat, she couldn't help but worry. Eleanor Whitaker was fiercely independent for her 82 years, but lately Lily had noticed little signs of struggle, unopened mail piling up, her usually pristine garden untended, the occasional confusion about which day it was during their over-the-fence chats. "Arms up," Lily instructed, wrapping a warm scarf around Maddie's neck. The little girl giggled as the soft yarn tickled her chin. "Now remember what we talked about when visiting Miss Eleanor? Be gentle and use my indoor voice," Maddie recited, pulling on her mittens. "And ask before touching anything, because old things are delicate." "That's my girl." Lily zipped up her own coat and grabbed the thermos of soup. The warmth seeped through her gloves, a small comfort against the biting cold they were about to face. They stepped out onto their front porch, and the wind immediately whipped at their clothes. The sleet had turned the world into a glassy, treacherous place. Lily held Maddie's hand tight as they carefully made their way down their steps and along the icy sidewalk. "Mama, look!" Maddie pointed to Eleanor's house. "There's a truck I never saw before." Lily followed her daughter's gaze to the unfamiliar pickup truck in Eleanor's driveway. Its dark blue paint was barely visible under a coating of road salt and slush. Something about it made her uneasy. Eleanor never had visitors this late, and certainly not in weather like this. They climbed the steps to Eleanor's wraparound porch, their footsteps echoing on the old wooden boards. The porch light was on, casting a weak yellow glow through the sleety darkness. Lily could see her own breath in the cold air as she raised her hand to knock. "Hold the soup for a minute, sweetheart," Lily whispered, passing the thermos to Maddie while she knocked on the heavy wooden door. The sound seemed too loud in the winter quiet. They waited, listening to the wind chase dead leaves across the porch. Lily was about to knock again when she heard footsteps approaching from inside. Heavy footsteps, not Eleanor's familiar shuffle. The door creaked open, and Lily found herself looking up at a tall man she'd never seen before. His dark hair was damp from the storm, and his expression was guarded, almost wary. He filled the doorway with his presence, one hand still gripping the doorframe, as if uncertain whether to open it fully or close it again. "Can I help you?" His voice was deep but quiet, with an edge of protectiveness that made Lily instinctively pull Maddie closer to her side. "I'm Lily Hart from next door," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her growing concern. "This is my daughter, Maddie. We're here to check on Eleanor. Is she all right?" The man's posture shifted slightly, but his expression remained careful, controlled. "I'm Ethan Whitaker," he said after a moment's pause. "Eleanor's grandson." Lily blinked in surprise. She'd heard Eleanor mention her grandson before, but always in past tense, speaking of him as if he were a distant memory rather than someone who might suddenly appear on a stormy winter evening. Maddie, who had been unusually quiet, took a small step forward, still clutching the soup thermos and her drawing. "We brought Miss Eleanor some soup," she announced, her clear voice cutting through the awkward tension. "It's chicken and stars, and I made her a picture with butterflies." Something in Ethan's expression softened almost imperceptibly at Maddie's words, but his stance remained protective as he stood in the dimly lit entry. The warm light from inside cast shadows across his face, making it hard for Lily to read his expression fully. The wind howled around them, sending a shower of sleet against the porch railing, while they stood frozen in this moment of uncertainty. "Come in," Ethan said, his voice carrying a slight edge of reluctance. He stepped back, holding the heavy oak door wider. "My grandmother's in the kitchen." Lily guided Maddie inside, the warmth of the house a stark contrast to the biting wind at their backs. The entryway was dim, lit only by a small table lamp that cast long shadows across faded wallpaper. The familiar scent of Eleanor's home, old books, lavender sachets, and a touch of dust, wrapped around them. "Miss Eleanor?" Lily called out, setting the thermos on a side table to help Maddie with her wet boots. "It's Lily and Maddie from next door." "Oh, what a lovely surprise!" Eleanor's voice drifted from the kitchen, followed by the scraping of chair legs against linoleum. "I'm just making some tea." Lily hurried toward the kitchen, leaving Maddie to arrange their boots neatly by the door. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet as she passed through the living room, where stacks of books created miniature towers on every surface. Family photos lined the walls, their frames collecting dust. Younger versions of Eleanor, a man who must have been her late husband, and a small boy with serious eyes who had to be Ethan. She reached the kitchen doorway just in time to see Eleanor wobbling, trying to lift a heavy copper kettle with both hands. The elderly woman's slippered foot caught on the corner of a worn rug, throwing her off balance. "Oh!" Eleanor gasped as she pitched forward. Lily lunged forward, her heart jumping into her throat. She caught Eleanor's elbow with one hand and steadied the kettle with the other, preventing what could have been a nasty fall. "I've got you," Lily said softly, helping Eleanor regain her footing. "Let's set this down, shall we?" "My goodness," Eleanor breathed, allowing Lily to guide her to a kitchen chair. Her thin hands trembled slightly. "That could have been quite the disaster. Thank you, dear." Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face tight with concern. "Grandma, you should have called me to help." "Nonsense." Eleanor waved her hand dismissively, though color had returned to her cheeks. "I've been making tea in this kitchen for 50 years. Maddie peeked around Ethan's tall frame, clutching her latest drawing to her chest. "Miss Eleanor, are you okay?" "Right as rain now, sweetheart." Eleanor smiled, patting the chair next to her. "Come show me what you've brought." While Maddie settled in beside Eleanor, chattering about her artwork, Lily retrieved the thermos from the entryway. She found mugs in their familiar cabinet. Eleanor had never changed their location in all the years Lily had known her, and began pouring the still steaming soup. "You didn't have to do this," Ethan said quietly, watching from his position against the doorframe. His arms were crossed over his chest, his posture suggesting discomfort despite being in his grandmother's kitchen. "Good neighbors look out for each other," Lily replied, setting a mug of soup in front of Eleanor. "Especially during weather like this. I noticed no one had shoveled your walk today." "That would be my fault," Ethan admitted, finally moving into the kitchen to accept the mug Lily offered him. "I just got in late last night and today was," he trailed off, taking a sip of soup instead of finishing his thought. The kitchen fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the sound of spoons against ceramic and Maddie's occasional commentary about her drawing. The sleet continued its percussion against the windows, but inside, the soup worked its magic. Color returned to Eleanor's cheeks, and even Ethan's rigid posture relaxed slightly as he finished his portion. "This is wonderful," Eleanor said, reaching for Lily's hand. "Just what I needed. You always know, don't you?" "It's just soup," Lily demurred, but squeezed Eleanor's fingers gently. "No, it's kindness," Eleanor insisted. "And in weather like this, kindness matters more than anything." Ethan set his empty mug down and reached for his wallet. "Let me pay you for this, for your time and the ingredients." "Oh, no," Lily shook her head, already gathering her things. "That's not necessary." "I insist," he said, pulling out several bills. The amount he tried to press into her hand made Lily's eyes widen. It was far more than a pot of soup could ever cost, even with premium ingredients. "Really, I couldn't," she said firmly, stepping back. The money felt wrong somehow, like it would transform a simple act of caring into a transaction. "We're neighbors. That's all there is to it." Something flickered across Ethan's face, frustration perhaps, or something deeper she couldn't quite read. He still held the money out, but Lily was already helping Maddie back into her coat. "At least let me pay for the ingredients," he tried again. "The soup's a gift," Lily said, her tone gentle but firm. "That's what neighbors do." She turned to Eleanor, who was watching the exchange with an unreadable expression. "I'll bring more by tomorrow, if this weather keeps up." "You're a dear girl," Eleanor said warmly. "Thank you for checking on me." Maddie gave Eleanor a careful hug, then scampered to the door where Lily helped her with her boots. They stepped back out into the storm, the wind immediately whipping at their coats. As Lily closed the door behind them, she caught one last glimpse of Ethan still standing in the kitchen doorway, the money still in his hand, watching them with that same unsettled expression. The walk home was only next door, but the sleet had picked up, stinging their faces. Lily couldn't shake the strange feeling about Ethan's insistence on paying, about the too large sum he'd tried to give her. Something about it nagged at her, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. The morning sun streamed through the diner's windows, catching dust motes in its golden rays. Lily tied her apron with practiced moves, the familiar weight of her order pad in her pocket bringing comfort after the strange encounter last night. The bell above the door chimed steadily as the breakfast regulars filed in, shaking off the lingering chill from yesterday's storm. "Did you hear?" Betty Morgan leaned across the counter, her coffee cup already extended for a refill. "The Whitaker boy is back in town." Lily kept her face neutral as she topped off Betty's cup. "More cream?" "No sugar, but listen." Betty's eyes sparkled with the thrill of fresh gossip. "Sarah from the bank saw him yesterday. Said he looked rough, like he's been living out of his car or something." "Now, Betty," Lily said gently, "I'm sure there's more to the story than that." The morning rush picked up its usual rhythm. Lily moved between tables, jotting down orders for Denver omelets and whole wheat toast, her shoes squeaking against the checkered floor. The conversations around her buzzed with speculation about Ethan Whitaker. Mrs. Alvarez sat in her usual booth by the window, her silver hair neatly arranged beneath a purple knit hat. She watched Lily approach with knowing eyes. "Good morning, dear. I'll have my usual." "Coming right up, Mrs. Alvarez. 1 blueberry waffle with extra butter." Lily scribbled the order, but Mrs. Alvarez's hand touched her wrist, stopping her. "You live next door to Eleanor Whitaker, don't you?" The older woman's voice dropped lower. "Be careful there, dear. The Whitakers, they've always been complicated." Lily paused, order pad hovering. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Alvarez sighed, adjusting her napkin. "That family owned half the mills in town once upon a time. Good times, they were generous. Bad times." She shook her head. "They forgot about the folks who built those mills. Pride can make people blind." "Eleanor's always been kind to us," Lily said firmly. "She used to watch Maddie when I picked up extra shifts." "Oh, Eleanor's a dear soul," Mrs. Alvarez agreed. "But that grandson of hers." She trailed off as more customers entered, the bell chiming again. Lily moved through the morning rush, carrying plates loaded with eggs and hash browns, refilling coffee cups, and trying to ignore the snippets of conversation that followed her, living who knows where all these years. Probably wants something from poor Eleanor. Those Whitakers always thought they were better than everyone. The lunch crowd started trickling in as the breakfast regulars cleared out. Lily's feet ached, and she was grateful for the momentary lull that let her lean against the counter. She pulled out her phone to check on Maddie, who was spending the morning with a friend. A text notification popped up from Eleanor. "Dear, would you mind stopping by later? Have a stubborn window that won't budge since the storm. No rush if you're busy, Eleanor." Lily smiled at the formal way Eleanor always signed her texts, like they were proper letters. She quickly typed back, "Of course. I'll come by after my shift ends at 3. "You're too good, Lily Hart," Jenny, her fellow waitress, said as she passed with a bus tub full of dishes. "Always helping everyone." "It's just a stuck window," Lily replied, pocketing her phone. "Besides, Eleanor's basically family." "Well, just watch yourself around that grandson of hers," Jenny warned. "Sarah at the bank said—" "I know what Sarah said," Lily cut in, more sharply than she intended. She softened her tone. "Sorry, it's just. Maybe we should all wait to judge until we know the whole story." Jenny shrugged and disappeared into the kitchen. Lily grabbed her coffee pot and made another round of her tables, but her mind kept drifting to the way Ethan had tried to press too much money into her hand the night before, his eyes carrying a weight she couldn't quite understand. A group of mill workers came in for their lunch break, their boots leaving trails of sawdust on the floor. Their conversation, like everyone else's that morning, centered on Ethan Whitaker's return. "Heard he's been doing odd jobs out west," one said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Odd jobs? In those fancy clothes?" Another scoffed. "Nah, something's not right there." Lily took their orders efficiently, keeping her expression professional, despite the growing urge to defend Eleanor's grandson. She couldn't explain why it bothered her so much. She barely knew him. But she remembered Eleanor's face lighting up when she mentioned his name, the way her hands had trembled slightly as she'd spooned soup into bowls last night. The lunch rush picked up, and Lily fell into the familiar dance of balancing plates and dodging other servers. She wiped tables, counted change, and smiled through the endless speculation about the Whitakers that seemed to fill every corner of the diner. During a brief break, she found herself beside Mrs. Alvarez's booth again. The older woman was finishing her tea, watching Lily with those same knowing eyes. "You know," Mrs. Alvarez said quietly, "I remember when Eleanor first started at the library. People talked then, too. A Whitaker, working a public job? But she proved them all wrong. Built that children's reading program from nothing." She patted Lily's hand. "Just remember, dear, complicated doesn't always mean bad." Lily nodded, grateful for the small moment of kindness in a morning full of judgment. She cleared Mrs. Alvarez's dishes and continued her rounds, the weight of Eleanor's text message sitting warm in her pocket like a promise. The afternoon sun had melted most of the ice from yesterday's storm, leaving puddles that sparkled on the sidewalk. Lily balanced a wrapped slice of apple pie in one hand while holding Maddie's mittened fingers with the other. The pie had been left over from the diner's lunch rush, and her boss had insisted she take it home. Instead, she decided to bring it to Eleanor. "Can I give Mrs. Whitaker my new drawing?" Maddie asked, clutching a piece of paper in her free hand. "I made it special during art time." "Of course you can, sweetie. I'm sure she'll love it." Lily squeezed her daughter's hand as they climbed the creaky porch steps. This time, Eleanor answered the door herself, looking steadier than the night before. "Oh, my dears! What a lovely surprise." She ushered them inside, the warmth of the house, a welcome change from the crisp air. "We brought pie," Lily said, following Eleanor into the kitchen. "And Maddie has something for you, too." Maddie proudly presented her artwork, a crayon drawing of Eleanor's house with flowers blooming despite the winter season. Eleanor's eyes misted over as she accepted it. "This is absolutely beautiful, dear. I know just where to put it." She hobbled to the refrigerator and secured it with a magnet shaped like a book. "Right where I can see it while I'm having my morning tea." "The window's still sticking?" Lily asked, glancing at the old wooden frame that Eleanor had mentioned in her text. "Oh yes, terribly," Ethan tried, but Eleanor gestured toward the living room window. "He's not much for household repairs, I'm afraid." Lily moved to examine the window, noting the worn groove where the sash cord should slide smoothly. From this angle, she could see into the corner of the room where Ethan sat in a worn armchair, his attention fixed on his phone. The screen was cracked, spiderwebbing across one corner, but still clearly visible. As she worked the window up and down, testing its movement, a notification lit up Ethan's phone screen. The words, "Quiet Blessings Foundation, Approval Batch, 17, flashed briefly before he jerked the phone away, angling it toward his chest. His eyes darted up, meeting Lily's for a fraction of a second before he looked away. "Just needs a bit of WD-40, Lily said, turning back to Eleanor. "The track's dry from age. I can bring some over tomorrow if you'd like." "Would you? That would be wonderful." Eleanor settled into her kitchen chair, already cutting small bites of the pie. "Maddie, would you like to share this with me? It looks far too good to eat alone." While Maddie and Eleanor shared the pie, Lily worked on the window, occasionally stealing glances at Ethan. He remained in his corner, shoulders tense, thumb scrolling rapidly across his phone screen. Whatever the Quiet Blessings Foundation was, it clearly wasn't something he wanted others to know about. "There," Lily said, giving the window one final push. It slid up smoothly now, though it would definitely need that lubricant tomorrow. "That should hold until I can bring the WD-40. "You're an angel," Eleanor said, dabbing at her mouth with a napkin. "Isn't she an angel, Ethan?" Ethan looked up, his expression guarded. "Very helpful," he said quietly, then returned to his phone. The wall clock chimed 4 times, and Lily realized they needed to head home. "Time for us to go, Maddie. You have homework to finish before dinner." "Do I have to?" Maddie asked, but she was already standing, used to their routine. Eleanor hugged them both goodbye at the door, her thin arms surprisingly strong. "Thank you again for the pie. And the drawing, and the window." "You're welcome," Lily said. "See you tomorrow with that WD-40. As they walked home, Maddie skipped ahead, jumping in puddles despite Lily's half-hearted protests. Lily's mind wandered back to that notification on Ethan's phone, Quiet Blessings Foundation. The name sounded like a charity, but why would Ethan be so quick to hide it? And what was Approval Batch 17? She watched Maddie splash in another puddle, her daughter's laughter carrying on the cold air. Between Eleanor's evasive grandson, the too large tip he'd tried to give her, and now this mysterious foundation, something didn't add up. A gust of wind rustled the bare branches overhead, sending a shower of water drops onto their path. Lily pulled her coat tighter, frowning as she considered Ethan's guilty expression when he'd caught her looking at his phone. What was he hiding? The old church bells chimed 9 times as Lily and Maddie climbed the worn stone steps. Morning sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the wooden pews. The familiar scent of lemon polish and aging hymnals wrapped around them like a comfortable blanket. "Good morning, dear ones," Pastor Ruth's warm voice carried across the entrance hall. She stood near the bulletin board, her silver hair neatly pinned back, wearing her usual Sunday cardigan. The pastor's kind eyes crinkled at the corners as she gave Maddie a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Morning, Pastor Ruth," Lily replied, helping Maddie out of her coat. "Beautiful day for service." "Indeed it is. And Maddie, I heard you got an A on your art project last week?" Pastor Ruth knelt down to Maddie's level, the way she always did with children. Maddie nodded shyly. "I drew our house and Miss Eleanor's next door." "How thoughtful. Speaking of Eleanor, I haven't seen her at service in a few weeks. Is she feeling better?" Before Lily could answer, Mrs. Alvarez appeared beside them, her flowered dress rustling as she moved. "Eleanor Whitaker?" she asked, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "I saw lights on at her place last night. That grandson of hers is back in town." Pastor Ruth's expression remained neutral, but her eyes showed concern. "Ethan? It's been quite a while." Mrs. Alvarez's lips pressed into a thin line. "Too long, if you ask me. Those Whitakers—" She shook her head, pearls clicking softly against her collar. "They owned half the mills in this town once upon a time. My Alberto worked at the river mill for 30 years. Then the layoffs came, and suddenly the Whitakers couldn't remember the faces of people who'd helped build their fortune." Lily shifted uncomfortably. sensing the weight of old hurts in Mrs. Alvarez's words. She thought of Ethan's guarded expression, the way he'd tried to overpay for simple soup. There was more to this story, but church steps weren't the place to dig deeper. "Come on, sweetie," Lily guided Maddie toward their usual pew. "Let's get settled before the organ starts." They slipped into the smooth wooden bench, Maddie immediately reaching for a hymnal. Around them, other families filtered in, their whispered conversations creating a soft hum beneath the prelude music. But Lily noticed how heads turned when Mrs. Alvarez spoke to another longtime church member, gesturing in a way that clearly meant she was sharing news about Ethan's return. During the service, Pastor Ruth spoke about forgiveness and fresh starts. "Sometimes," she said, her gentle voice carrying to the rafters, "we carry old wounds so long they become part of who we are. But God calls us to look with new eyes, to see each soul as He sees them." Lily wondered if the sermon topic was coincidence or carefully chosen. She caught Mrs. Alvarez dabbing her eyes during the prayer and several other older members nodding along to Pastor Ruth's words about letting go of past hurts. After the final hymn, families gathered in the social hall for coffee and cookies. Maddie colored quietly at a corner table while Lily helped pour coffee, a task she'd taken on months ago. She couldn't help overhearing snippets of conversation. "Remember when old Mr. Whitaker wouldn't even shop at local stores? That big house on Hill Street used to be theirs. Wonder what brought the grandson back now?" Pastor Ruth appeared at Lily's elbow, reaching for the coffee pot. "People have long memories in small towns," she said quietly. "Sometimes too long." She paused, adding, "Eleanor was different, you know. She taught at the school, volunteered at the library. Never put on airs, even when times were good." Lily nodded, thinking of her elderly neighbor's worn furniture and simple ways. Nothing about Eleanor suggested old money or social position. "She's been nothing but kind to us," Lily said. "Watches Maddie sometimes when I pick up extra shifts." "That's Eleanor," Pastor Ruth smiled. "She sees people, not position." The pastor's eyes held Lily's for a moment longer. "Maybe her grandson does too." Before Lily could respond, Maddie tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can we go? I want to show Miss Eleanor my drawing from Sunday school." They gathered their things, saying goodbye to Pastor Ruth and waving to familiar faces. Outside, the late morning sun had warmed the air, melting the last patches of snow from the church lawn. Maddie skipped ahead, her patent leather shoes clicking on the sidewalk. "Mom?" Maddie slowed her steps, falling back beside Lily. Her small face was scrunched in thought. "Why don't people like Ethan?" Lily took a deep breath, considering how to answer. The truth was, she didn't really know. She'd seen kindness in the way he cared for Eleanor, despite his gruff manner. But there was clearly history here, old wounds that ran deeper than surface judgments. "Sometimes," she started carefully, "people remember things that happened a long time ago, before you or I lived here. And those memories can make it hard to see things clearly now." Maddie frowned. "But that's not fair. He brought me hot chocolate when we fixed Miss Eleanor's window." Lily squeezed her daughter's hand, touched by her simple, honest assessment. Out of the mouths of babes, as her grandmother used to say. Maybe they all needed to look with new eyes, as Pastor Ruth had suggested. Sleet had given way to a bone-chilling drizzle by Tuesday evening. Lily balanced the thermos of fresh chicken soup in one hand while wrestling with her umbrella in the other. The yellow porch light of Eleanor's house glowed like a beacon through the misty darkness. As she approached, she could make out two figures on the covered porch. Ethan stood with his hands in his pockets, talking in low tones to a man in a crisp charcoal suit. Papers were spread across Eleanor's old wicker table, partially protected from the dampness by the porch roof. Lily hesitated at the bottom of the steps. The suited man was gesturing at something on the papers, his silver pen catching the light. "Just initial here, Mr. Whitaker, and we can proceed with the quarterly disbursements as planned." Ethan glanced up and noticed Lily, his shoulders tensed. "Ms. Hart," he said stiffly, "Eleanor's inside." But Lily couldn't help seeing the bold heading on the top document, Trust Management Agreement. Below it, were columns of numbers that made her eyes widen. The suited man gathered the papers quickly, sliding them into a leather portfolio. "We'll continue this later," he said smoothly, nodding to both of them before descending the steps and disappearing into a sleek black car parked on the street. "What's going on?" Lily asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Is Eleanor okay?" "She's fine," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "It's just some paperwork." "Trust? Paperwork?" Lily clutched the thermos tighter. "Look, I know it's none of my business, but Eleanor means a lot to me and Maddie. If someone's trying to take advantage of her—" "No one's taking advantage of anyone." Ethan's jaw clenched. He looked torn, glancing between Lily and the front door. Finally, he sighed. "Come inside. There's something I should explain." Eleanor was dozing in her armchair when they entered, an open book in her lap. The living room was warm and smelled of cedar from the fireplace. Ethan gestured for Lily to follow him into the kitchen. "I've been trying to keep this quiet," he said, leaning against the counter, "but you deserve to know the truth, especially since you've been so kind to Eleanor." Lily set the thermos down and crossed her arms, waiting. "A few years ago I developed an app," Ethan began. "It started as a simple thing, helping veterans coordinate their medical appointments and benefits. I was working as a programmer then, and I saw how many older vets were struggling with the system." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "The app took off. A major healthcare company bought it for a lot of money, more than I ever expected." Lily's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "I set up a trust," Ethan continued. "Part of it pays Eleanor's expenses, the mortgage, utilities, medical bills. But there's more, the Quiet Blessings Foundation. That's mine too. We've been quietly helping people in town who need it. Mrs. Rodriguez's cancer treatments, the Thompson kids' college funds, even some of the old mill workers' pensions." "But why keep it secret?" Lily asked, struggling to process this revelation. "Because money changes things," Ethan said quietly. "Changes how people look at you, treat you. I watched it happen to my family once. The mills, the layoffs, there's still so much bitterness. I wanted to help without the weight of the Whitaker name getting in the way." Lily sank into one of the kitchen chairs, stunned. The mysterious notification on his phone, the excessive cash he'd tried to give her, his constant evasiveness. It all made sense now. "Does Eleanor know?" "Everything?" Ethan nodded. "It's her choice too, keeping things quiet. She says the best blessings are the ones that don't draw attention to themselves." A soft snore drifted in from the living room, making them both smile despite the tension. Lily looked at the thermos of soup she'd brought, thinking how small it seemed now compared to the scale of Ethan's secret generosity. "So all this time," she said slowly, "you've been here, watching over her, over the whole town really, and letting everyone think that I'm just the prodigal grandson who does odd jobs?" Ethan's smile was wry. "It's easier that way, safer." Morning sunlight streamed through Lily's small living room window as she methodically folded warm towels from the dryer. The familiar task usually brought her comfort, but today her hands moved mechanically while her mind churned over Ethan's revelation from the night before. A wealthy man, hiding in plain sight, secretly helping people through some foundation she'd never heard of. Maddie's school uniform shirts made a neat pile on the coffee table. The routine of smooth, fold, stack helped calm her racing thoughts. At least until the sharp rap at the door made her jump, sending a freshly folded shirt tumbling to the floor. Through the window, she saw a courier in a brown uniform shifting from foot to foot on her welcome mat. Strangish wasn't expecting any packages. "Lily Hart?" the courier asked when she opened the door. He thrust out an electronic tablet. "Need your signature here." Her stomach tightened as she scrawled her name. The courier handed her a thick manila envelope and hurried back to his waiting van. Lily's hands trembled as she saw the return address. Morrison, Associates, Attorneys at Law. The same firm Caleb had used during their divorce. She sank onto the couch, the unfolded laundry forgotten. Inside was a stack of legal documents, the top page bearing the header, Petition to modify custody agreement. The words swam before her eyes as she forced herself to read. Petitioner Caleb Morgan hereby moves to modify the existing custody arrangement, citing substantial changes in circumstances including, but not limited to, respondents' continued financial instability and unsafe associations. The papers slipped from her fingers. Unsafe associations? Her mind flashed to Ethan and Eleanor, to the trust documents she'd glimpsed on the porch. How had Caleb even known about that? She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking so badly she had to type the number twice. Pastor Ruth, need some advice. Can I come by? 20 minutes later, she sat in Pastor Ruth's small office, the papers spread across the desk between them. The pastor's kind face creased with concern as she read. "He's using Eleanor and Ethan against me," Lily whispered. "But they're just my neighbors. I was just bringing soup, being kind like you always tell us to be in your sermons." "Kindness should never be a weapon," Pastor Ruth said firmly. "But Caleb's trying to paint it as something else. Have you spoken with a lawyer?" Lily shook her head, throat tight. "I can barely make ends meet as it is. Legal fees." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I thought we were past this." Caleb's been so reasonable lately, even remembered Maddie's birthday last month. "Sometimes people surprise us," Pastor Ruth said gently. "And not always in good ways." Back home, Lily moved through the day in a fog. She managed to finish the laundry, help Maddie with homework, and put together a simple dinner of mac and cheese. But her thoughts kept circling back to those papers, to Caleb's accusations. After tucking Maddie in with an extra-long hug, Lily sat at her small kitchen table, the legal documents spread before her like a minefield. The steady hum of the refrigerator filled the silence as she stared at the words that threatened to tear her world apart. "Financial instability," she read again. Well, that wasn't news. She'd always struggled to make ends meet. But she'd never missed a bill payment, never let Maddie go without necessities. They had enough, even if just barely. But unsafe associations, that was new. That had to be about Ethan and his secret wealth. Somehow Caleb had found out about the trust, about Ethan's presence at Eleanor's house. And now he was twisting Lily's simple act of neighborly kindness into something suspicious. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight as Lily sat motionless, the custody papers stark under the overhead light. Her soup thermos from last night's visit to Eleanor's sat unwashed in the sink, a reminder of how quickly life could change. One moment of kindness, one glimpse of Ethan's secret, and now her daughter's future hung in the balance. The refrigerator hummed on, indifferent to her world crumbling around her. Thursday morning brought a steady stream of regulars to May's Diner. The bell above the door chimed constantly as Lily balanced plates of pancakes and refilled coffee mugs. The familiar rhythm of the breakfast rush usually helped her focus, but today her movements felt wooden, her mind still wrestling with yesterday's custody papers. "Psst! Lily!" Jenny, another waitress, grabbed her arm as she passed the service station. "You need to see this." Jenny pulled out her phone, glancing furtively around, before holding it low between them. Lily's stomach dropped as she saw the photo on the screen. Though blurry, she recognized Ethan's trust papers from his porch meeting. The document header was just barely legible. "I got this from my cousin who works at the bank," Jenny whispered, her eyes bright with excitement. "Can you believe it? That Whitaker guy's loaded. Like seriously loaded. People are saying millions." "Jenny, those are private documents." Lily's voice came out sharper than intended. "You shouldn't have that." "Oh, come on. People deserve to know what's really going on. I mean, why's he hiding it? What's he planning?" Jenny leaned closer. "And you've been over there a lot lately. What do you know about all this?" Before Lily could respond, she noticed Mrs. Alvarez at table 6 waving her phone at her friend, both women's heads bent together in conspiratorial whispers. At the counter, Mr. Peterson was showing something on his screen to the man next to him. The photo was spreading. Fast. "Order up!" Mac's voice boomed from the kitchen window, making Lily jump. She grabbed the plates, grateful for the excuse to escape Jenny's questioning. But everywhere she turned, snippets of conversation followed her. Secret millionaire. Probably trying to take over the old mill property. Just like his grandfather, thinks he can buy the town. By mid-morning, the diner hummed with speculation. Lily felt eyes following her as she moved between tables. These were people she'd served for years, neighbors who'd watched Maddie grow up, faces that had always meant community. Now their familiar warmth had an edge of calculation. During her break, Lily's phone buzzed with a text from Pastor Ruth. "Prayers for wisdom in this storm. My office is open if you need to talk." Another message popped up from an unknown number. "What's your connection to Whitaker's money? Interested in your story." Lily deleted it without responding. The lunch rush brought a new wave of customers and fresh variations of the rumors. She overheard snippets about the Quiet Blessings Foundation, speculation about Eleanor's will, and increasingly wild theories about Ethan's true motives for returning to town. "Lily?" Mrs. Martinez, one of her regular customers, touched her arm as she cleared plates. "Is it true about Eleanor? Is that young man taking advantage of her?" "No, Mrs. Martinez, it's not like that at all." Lily kept her voice low and steady. "Ethan's just trying to help his grandmother." Mrs. Martinez didn't look convinced. "Well, be careful, dear. Money changes people. And secrets? Secrets usually mean trouble." By late afternoon, Lily's shoulders ached from tension. She'd lost count of how many times she'd deflected questions or pretended not to hear whispered comments. Even Mac, usually focused solely on his grill, had asked if she knew anything about that trust business. Jenny cornered her again in the break room. "The photos all over social media now. Someone's saying there might be elder abuse involved? Like maybe he's pressuring Eleanor about her will or something?" "That's ridiculous." Lily's patience finally snapped. "Ethan's been paying Eleanor's bills and helping other people in town. He's not." She stopped, realizing she'd just confirmed his wealth to exactly the kind of gossip network he'd been trying to avoid. "I knew you knew something." Jenny's eyes lit up. "What else can you tell me about?" "No." Lily untied her apron with shaking hands. "I'm not discussing this anymore. It's not our business." She clocked out 30 minutes early, unable to face another moment of probing questions and suspicious looks. Outside, the afternoon had turned gray and cold. Tiny pellets of sleet stung her cheeks as she walked home. Main Street felt different now. The hardware store owner, usually quick with a wave, watched her pass with narrow eyes. Two women outside the pharmacy stopped talking abruptly when they saw her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and judgment. The sleet fell harder, clicking against store windows and parked cars. Lily pulled her collar higher, but she couldn't shield herself from the weight of the town's attention. Every passing car felt like another set of eyes. Every whisper carried on the wind seemed to hold her name. Her shoes crunched through the icy coating on the sidewalk as she passed the old mill buildings. Their empty windows stared down at her like accusing eyes, and Mrs. Alvarez's words about the Whitakers echoed in her mind. The past wasn't really past in a town like this. Old hurts ran deep, and new secrets had a way of reopening old wounds. The gray dusk settled around her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Ahead, Eleanor's porch light glowed through the sleet, a beacon she'd once found welcoming. Now it felt like a spotlight, marking her connection to the town's biggest story in years. Lily's mind drifted to the custody papers waiting at home, and her heart sank further. How would this scandal affect her case? What would Caleb's lawyer make of her association with all this drama? The icy wind cut through her uniform as she walked the last block home. She felt exposed, as if the entire town was watching from behind curtained windows, weighing her every move, judging her every connection. The simple act of bringing soup to a neighbor had somehow entangled her in a web of secrets and suspicions that threatened everything she'd worked so hard to build. The attic of Eleanor's Victorian home held the musty perfume of decades past. Dust motes danced in the weak Saturday morning light that filtered through a small circular window. Lily sneezed as she helped Eleanor sort through stacks of boxes, each labeled in neat handwriting that had yellowed with age. "I haven't been up here in years," Eleanor said, running her hand along a weathered trunk. "But it's time to organize things properly." She settled onto an old wooden chair that Lily had wiped clean, her cane propped against a nearby beam. Lily lifted the lid of a cardboard box marked, "Family Papers, 1985, 1990. The contents were a jumble of envelopes, photographs, and newspaper clippings. "Where should we start with these?" "Oh my," Eleanor's voice softened as she peered into the box. "I'd forgotten about those letters." She reached in and pulled out a bundle tied with faded blue ribbon. Lily helped Eleanor untie the delicate knot. The papers inside were creased from repeated folding and unfolding, the ink slightly blurred in places. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she held the first letter. "These are from Robert," she said quietly. "Ethan's father." Lily paused in her sorting. She'd never heard anyone mention Ethan's father before. Eleanor smoothed the paper with careful fingers and began to read aloud. "Dear Mom, I know Dad won't read this, but I have to try one more time. Maria is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Her family came here with nothing and built a life through hard work, the same values Dad claims to respect. The color of her skin doesn't change who she is or how much I love her." Eleanor's voice cracked. She took a steadying breath before continuing. "Robert met Maria at college. She was studying to be a teacher, brilliant, kind, beautiful, but my husband." She shook her head. "He was from the old guard, the mill owners who thought they were better than everyone else." Lily sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, listening as Eleanor revealed more of the painful history. The letters painted a picture of a young man fighting for love against generations of prejudice. Robert had chosen Maria over his inheritance, over his place in the family business, over everything he'd been raised to expect. "The last letter," Eleanor said, pulling out a tear-stained page, "came after their wedding. We weren't invited, of course. Robert wrote that he and Maria were moving west to start fresh. That's when my husband removed him from the will entirely." Lily thought of Ethan, who'd inherited his father's determination to do what he thought was right, regardless of appearances. Did they ever reconcile? Eleanor shook her head. "My husband died still angry. Robert and Maria were killed in a car accident when Ethan was 15. Her voice wavered. "I didn't even know until weeks after the funeral. Ethan went to live with Maria's sister in California." The attic seemed to grow heavier with the weight of so much unspoken grief. Lily found herself holding a photograph that had slipped from between the letters. In it, a young man with Ethan's eyes smiled beside a beautiful woman with warm brown skin and a radiant smile. They looked so happy, so in love, so unaware of the storms ahead. "That's why Ethan stayed away so long," Eleanor said softly. "This house held too many memories of rejection. When he finally came back to help me, he carried all that old hurt with him." Lily understood now why Ethan kept his wealth and generosity secret. He'd grown up watching how money and status had poisoned his family, torn apart love, and fed prejudice. The creak of floorboards below made them both look up. Footsteps approached the attic stairs, and then Ethan appeared, holding a drink carrier with 3 coffee cups. "I thought you might need." His voice trailed off as he saw the letters scattered around them. The color drained from his face as he recognized his father's handwriting. "Oh, sweetheart," Eleanor said gently. "We were just organizing some old papers." Ethan set the coffee down on a sturdy box, his movements careful and controlled. His eyes lingered on the photograph in Lily's hands, but he quickly looked away. "The hardware store had those window locks you wanted," he said, his voice rough. "I can install them this afternoon if you'd like." The abrupt change of subject hung in the air, but neither Lily nor Eleanor pressed him. Some wounds were still too tender to touch, even after all these years. The morning sun cast long shadows through Eleanor's kitchen windows as Lily sipped coffee from a chipped blue mug. Maddie sat at the table, working on another drawing, her legs swinging beneath her chair. The familiar scents of coffee and toast filled the cozy space. Ethan cleared his throat, his own coffee barely touched. "I was wondering if you and Maddie might want to see something." He shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with making the request. "There's this old building downtown, the Miller Street Recreation Center." Lily knew the place. It had been closed for years, its red brick walls collecting graffiti, and its windows gradually acquiring plywood covers. "The one by the old mill?" "That's it." Ethan's eyes brightened with something that looked like hope. "I've been thinking about fixing it up, making it into something useful again." Maddie looked up from her drawing. "Like a place for kids?" "Exactly." Ethan smiled at her. "And for veterans who need a place to meet, get help with paperwork, maybe have a hot meal." He turned back to Lily. "Would you want to see it? I could use an honest opinion." 20 minutes later, Lily's old Honda pulled up in front of the rec center. The building loomed before them, its brick facade wearing years of neglect, like an old coat. Ethan produced a key from his pocket and worked the heavy front door lock. "Watch your step," he warned as they entered. Their footsteps echoed on the wooden floor, stirring up dust that danced in the rays of light streaming through gaps in the plywood. The main room was vast, with high ceilings and tall windows. Despite the debris and dust, Lily could see the bones of something beautiful. Old basketball hoops hung at either end, their nets long gone. "Over here," Ethan gestured, leading them toward what had once been a kitchen. "I thought this could be renovated for community meals, maybe cooking classes." Maddie ran her hand along a counter, leaving trails in the dust. "Mom's really good at cooking. She could teach people." Lily felt her cheeks warm. "I just know the basics." "Sometimes that's exactly what people need," Ethan said quietly. He moved to the windows, pulling back a piece of plywood to let in more light. "The foundation is solid, the roof needs work, but it's all fixable." They walked through the rest of the building past old office spaces that could become counseling rooms, through a gymnasium that echoed with memories of games long past, and into smaller rooms perfect for art classes or group meetings. "How would you fund all this?" Lily asked, watching Maddie peek into a supply closet. "Anonymous donations," Ethan replied, his voice careful. "Through the foundation, no names attached." "The Quiet Blessings Foundation?" Lily remembered the notification on his phone. He nodded, running a hand through his hair. "The town has a long memory, especially about the Whitakers. If people knew I was behind it, they might refuse the help out of pride," Lily finished, understanding all too well. She thought of the cash he'd tried to give her for the soup. Maddie's voice echoed from across the room. "Look what I found." She held up an old photograph that must have fallen behind a cabinet, kids playing basketball, their faces bright with joy. "That could happen again," Ethan said softly. "Different kids, same joy. But only if people accept it for what it is, not who it's from." They spent another hour exploring. Maddie pointed out perfect spots for art supplies and reading corners. Lily found herself imagining the kitchen alive with warmth and activity. Ethan took notes on his phone, nodding at their suggestions. As they walked back to the car, the late morning sun had warmed the air. Maddie clutched her sketchbook, already full of ideas for the space. Lily could see the potential too, not just in the building, but in what it could mean for their struggling town. The drive back was quiet at first, each lost in thought. Maddie hummed softly in the back seat, pencil moving across paper. As they turned onto Maple Street, Ethan broke the silence. "Sometimes it's better when people don't know who to thank." Lily gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, not quite sure she agreed. The church basement hummed with activity as volunteers bustled around preparing for the community Thanksgiving meal. Steam rose from giant pots on portable burners, and the rich aroma of roasting turkey filled the air. Lily stood at a long folding table, her hands dusted with flour as she rolled out pie crusts. "Mom, where should I put these?" Maddie held up a box of paper turkeys she'd colored during art class. "Those would look nice on the tables, sweetie." Lily smiled, watching her daughter skip between the long tables, carefully placing a turkey at each place setting. The decorations added warmth to the otherwise plain basement, transforming it into something special. Mrs. Alvarez stirred an enormous pot of gravy, peering over her reading glasses at the gathering volunteers. "Someone was mighty generous with the food budget this year," she remarked. We've never had 3 turkeys before." Lily caught sight of Ethan near the stairs, pretending to study a clipboard while Eleanor chatted with her old friend Martha. He'd been doing that all morning, hovering at the edges, checking on things without drawing attention to himself. "The cranberry sauce needs more sugar," called Pastor Ruth from the kitchen. "Lily, would you mind?" As Lily measured sugar into the simmering pot, she watched Ethan slip a thick envelope to Pastor Ruth, who tucked it away without comment. His quiet way of giving touched something in her heart, even as she worried about the risks of his secrecy. "It smells amazing in here." Eleanor made her way to the kitchen, leaning on her cane. "Just like the church suppers we used to have when I was young." Maddie appeared at Eleanor's side. "I saved you the best turkey decoration, Miss Eleanor." She handed over a particularly sparkly paper bird. "See? It has glitter wings." Eleanor's eyes crinkled with delight. "Well, isn't that the prettiest thing? Thank you, dear." The basement grew warmer as more ovens fired up and more dishes came together. Women who'd been cooking together for decades worked alongside newer volunteers, sharing tips and stories. Lily noticed how Ethan watched it all, his expression softening whenever he looked at Eleanor laughing with her friends. "The rolls need to go in now," Lily called out, checking her watch. She'd brought her mother's recipe, the one that filled the house with the smell of home every holiday. As she slid the pans into the oven, Pastor Ruth approached. "You know, some folks were worried about having enough food this year, with the mill cutting hours again." She adjusted her glasses. "But then, this anonymous donation came in, more than enough for everyone." Lily glanced toward Ethan, who was now helping set up extra chairs. "Sometimes blessings come quietly," she said softly. The afternoon wore on, and people began arriving. Elderly couples who'd worked the mills their whole lives, young families with children in tow, veterans who usually ate alone. The basement filled with voices and laughter. Maddie darted between tables, making sure every paper turkey stood perfectly straight. She paused near Ethan, who was discreetly adding more plates to the serving line. "Mr. Whitaker," she whispered, "your secret is safe with me." She mimed, zipping her lips, and Ethan's surprised laugh echoed across the room. Eleanor presided over it all from her seat near the kitchen, greeting old friends and introducing them to her grandson. Lily noticed how the initial awkwardness around Ethan began to fade as the evening progressed. It was harder to maintain suspicion with a full plate and warm rolls in front of you. When it came time for grace, Pastor Ruth didn't mention donations or sponsors. She simply said, "We gather in gratitude for this food, this fellowship, and the hands that prepared it all." Lily helped serve, making sure everyone had enough. She caught Ethan watching her once, his expression unreadable, before he turned away to refill water pitchers. As the meal wound down, Maddie tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Can I sing that song? The one from choir?" Lily nodded, and Maddie stood on a chair, her clear voice rising above the murmur of conversation. "Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine." Other voices joined in, the old hymn filling the basement with harmony. Lily saw tears in Eleanor's eyes as she sang along, her hand finding Ethan's where he stood behind her chair. The cleanup took almost as long as the preparation, but nobody seemed to mind. Containers of leftovers were packed for those who needed them, tables were wiped down, and dishes were washed in the big industrial sink. "Your rolls were perfect," Mrs. Alvarez told Lily as they stored the last of the folding chairs. "Just like your mother used to make." Finally, Lily helped Maddie into her coat, tired but content. The evening had felt like a glimpse of what their town could be, not divided by old hurts and suspicions, but united around a shared table. As she reached into her coat pocket for her car keys, her fingers brushed against paper. She pulled out a carefully folded note she hadn't put there. In neat, unfamiliar handwriting were the words, "To the chef who brought soup when it mattered, thank you." There was no signature, but Lily knew. She tucked the note back into her pocket, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the kitchen's lingering heat. Sarah Miller's phone buzzed at 6:45 a.m. with a news alert from the local blog, Milltown Matters. She squinted at the screen, still groggy from sleep, but her eyes widened as she read the headline, Whitaker fortune used to control town assets. The early morning light filtered through her kitchen window as she started the coffee maker and settled at her small kitchen table to read. The article was filled with speculation and hints about the mysterious Quiet Blessings Foundation, suggesting that Ethan Whitaker was using his wealth to gain control over Eleanor's estate and other town properties. By 7:30, the diner was already buzzing with gossip. Lily tried to focus on filling coffee cups and taking orders, but snippets of conversation kept catching her attention. "Did you see what they wrote about the Whitaker boy?" Mrs. Peterson whispered loudly to her breakfast companion, "using his money to control his poor grandmother." "Always knew there was something fishy about him coming back," Mr. Jenkins added, shaking his head. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee, remembering Ethan's genuine concern for Eleanor and his attempts to help the town quietly. The blog post had twisted everything, making his generosity sound sinister. During her break, she pulled out her phone to read the full article. The writer had dug deep, uncovering public records about the Quiet Blessings Foundation and its connection to various property purchases in town. There were pointed questions about why someone with so much money would keep his wealth secret unless he had something to hide. "Lily?" Her manager Dave called from the kitchen. "Phone call for you." She wiped her hands on her apron and picked up the diner's landline. It was Eleanor, her voice shaky. "Dear, have you seen what they're saying about Ethan?" Eleanor asked. "It's all wrong. He's been trying so hard to help people without making a fuss." "I know, Eleanor," Lily assured her. "Anyone who knows Ethan can see through this." But as the day wore on, it became clear that many people were quick to believe the worst. The diner filled with regular customers who normally came for coffee and stayed for gossip. Today, the gossip had teeth. "I heard he's been paying off town officials," one woman whispered. "My cousin works at the bank," another added. "Says there's something strange about all these anonymous donations." By lunchtime, Lily noticed several people giving her sideways glances. Her connection to the Whitakers had made her suspect by association. Even Dave seemed distant, making excuses about having to cut back on hours until things settled down. Around 2 o'clock, Ethan's truck pulled into the diner parking lot. He sat there for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, before finally getting out. The conversation inside dropped to hushed whispers as he entered. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and his usually neat hair disheveled. He took a seat at the counter, directly in Lily's section. "Just coffee," he said quietly when she approached. "Black." Lily poured his coffee, wanting to say something comforting but aware of all the eyes watching them. "How's Eleanor?" she asked softly. "Upset." He stared into his coffee cup. "She shouldn't have to deal with this. I thought keeping things quiet would protect her, protect everyone." A few seats down, someone pointedly cleared their throat and muttered something about rich folks and their secrets. Ethan's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. He pulled out his wallet and left money for the coffee he hadn't touched. "I should go." As he stood to leave, Mrs. Alvarez entered the diner. She took one look at Ethan and announced loudly, "Just like your grandfather, thinking you can buy and sell this town as you please." The diner fell silent. Ethan's face went pale, but he said nothing as he walked out. Lily watched him go, feeling helpless. She wanted to run after him, to defend him, but she had 3 tables waiting for their orders and bills to pay that required this job. Throughout the afternoon, more customers arrived with printouts of the blog post, discussing it over pie and coffee. Some defended Ethan, remembering mysterious payments that had helped with medical bills or college tuition. But others saw conspiracy in every act of kindness, questioning motives they'd never thought to examine before. At 4 o'clock, Lily's phone lit up with a text from Eleanor. "The bank called. They're freezing the trust accounts pending investigation." Before Lily could respond, another text came through. "Adult Protective Services wants to do an evaluation. They're worried about financial exploitation." Lily's hands shook as she typed back. "Do you want me to come over?" "No, dear," Eleanor replied. "They're coming this evening. Best not to have anyone here who might complicate things." The rest of Lily's shift passed in a blur of worry. She watched the sun set through the diner's windows, thinking about Eleanor alone in her house, waiting for strangers to come evaluate whether her grandson was taking advantage of her. About Ethan, whose attempts to help without recognition had backfired so spectacularly. About how quickly kindness could be twisted into suspicion when people were determined to see the worst. At 5:45, as Lily was hanging up her apron, she saw a car with government plates pull up in front of Eleanor's house. Two people in business attire got out, carrying clipboards and briefcases. They walked up the porch steps where Eleanor's light still shone, casting long shadows across the evening snow. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Eleanor's living room windows when two women in business attire arrived at the front door. Their knock was firm and professional, echoing through the old house. Lily, who had been helping Eleanor sort through her medicine cabinet, felt her stomach tighten as she heard Ethan's footsteps moving to answer the door. "Good afternoon," said the taller woman, showing her credentials. "I'm Patricia Walsh from Adult Protective Services, and this is my colleague, Maria Rodriguez. We're here to conduct a wellness check on Eleanor Whitaker." Ethan's shoulders tensed, but he stepped aside to let them in. "Of course, please come in." Eleanor sat straight-backed in her favorite armchair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Despite her age, she carried herself with dignity and composure. "I was expecting you might come," she said, her voice steady. "Though I can't imagine why." Patricia Walsh settled onto the couch, opening a leather portfolio. "Mrs. Whitaker, we received some concerning reports about possible financial exploitation. We're here to ensure your well-being and assess the situation." "Financial exploitation?" Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "By whom?" Maria Rodriguez, who had been taking notes on a tablet, looked up. "We understand your grandson has recently taken control of your finances through a trust arrangement." "Taken control?" Eleanor's laugh was sharp. "Ethan has helped me manage what I already have. There's quite a difference." Lily stood in the doorway between the living room and kitchen, feeling like an intruder but unable to leave. She watched as Ethan remained standing, his face carefully neutral. "Mr. Whitaker." Patricia addressed him directly. "Our records show several large transfers from your personal accounts to your grandmother's over the past year. Can you explain the purpose of these transactions?" "They're gifts," Ethan said simply. "I've been successful in my work, and I wanted to ensure my grandmother's comfort." "And the trust agreement?" Maria prompted. "That's quite a substantial legal arrangement for simple gifts." Eleanor's cane tapped against the hardwood floor. "The trust was my idea," she stated firmly. "I asked Ethan to help me organize my affairs properly." Patricia's pen scratched across her notepad. "Mrs. Whitaker, do you feel pressured to agree with your grandson's financial decisions?" "Good heavens, no." Eleanor's voice held a hint of steel. "I was a librarian for 40 years. I managed the library's budget and my own household after my husband passed. I'm quite capable of understanding financial matters." Lily noticed Ethan's hands were clenched behind his back, though his face remained calm. She wanted to speak up, to tell them about his quiet generosity, about the way he checked Eleanor's furnace and fixed loose floorboards without being asked. But she knew her words might only complicate things further. "Mr. Whitaker," Maria continued, "we need to discuss the Quiet Blessings Foundation. Our preliminary investigation shows numerous payments to local residents and businesses, all routed through this organization." "The foundation is separate from my grandmother's affairs," Ethan replied. "It's a private charitable organization I established years ago." "Yet the foundation has paid several of Mrs. Whitaker's larger expenses," Patricia noted, "including her property taxes and some medical bills." "Because I chose to help my grandmother through proper channels," Ethan explained. "Everything is documented and above board." The questioning continued for over an hour. They asked about Eleanor's medical care, her daily routine, her social connections. They examined papers, took photos of documents, and made endless notes. Eleanor answered everything with sharp clarity, occasionally shooting annoyed glances at her grandson when he tried to jump in and explain things for her. "I may be old," she told the social workers, "but I'm not addled." Finally, Patricia closed her portfolio. "We'll need to review everything we've gathered. In the meantime, Mr. Whitaker, you should expect contact from our financial investigation unit. They'll likely place a temporary hold on the trust accounts pending review." "A hold?" Eleanor frowned. "On my accounts, too?" "It's standard procedure, Mrs. Whitaker, just until we can verify everything is in order." After they left, silence filled the house. Eleanor's cane tapped thoughtfully against the floor. "Well," she said at last, "that was quite an afternoon." Lily moved to the kitchen and began making tea, needing something to do with her hands. She could hear Ethan and Eleanor talking quietly in the living room, their voices a low murmur of concern. The sky outside had darkened to purple when Ethan finally stepped into the kitchen. Lily was wiping down the counter, though it was already clean. "They've frozen everything," he said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. "Not just the trust accounts, all of my personal accounts too. The foundation's funds are locked down, pending investigation." Lily's hand stilled on the counter. She thought about the rec center renovation, about the meals the foundation provided, about all the quiet help that flowed through the town like an underground stream. Now that stream had run dry, at least for a while. "How long?" she asked. "They wouldn't say. Could be days, could be weeks." He ran a hand through his hair. "I should have known this would happen eventually. Secrets have a way of coming out." Lily looked at him, seeing the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. She wanted to offer comfort, but before she could speak, Eleanor's voice called from the living room, asking for her evening tea. The morning air was crisp as Lily walked Maddie to school, their breath forming small clouds in front of them. Maddie clutched her worn sketchbook to her chest, her favorite purple mittens peeking out from beneath it. The familiar brick building of Cedar Grove Elementary loomed ahead, its windows gleaming in the early sunlight. "Remember, I'll pick you up right after art club," Lily said, adjusting Maddie's scarf. "Maybe you can show me what you drew today?" Maddie nodded, but her usual brightness seemed dimmed. Her fingers tightened around the sketchbook's edges. As they approached the school entrance, Lily noticed a cluster of mothers near the bike racks. She recognized Sarah Thompson and Beth Miller, both regular customers at the diner. Their voices carried across the schoolyard. "It's just not right," Sarah was saying, her voice barely attempting to be quiet. "Suddenly they're handing out art supplies like candy." Beth nodded, glancing their way. "Did you hear about the scholarship thing? For summer art camp? I mean, really. Some people will do anything for handouts." "Buying friends, if you ask me," Sarah added with a sniff. Maddie's shoulders hunched forward, and she pressed the sketchbook closer to her chest. Lily felt her daughter lean slightly against her side, a gesture that broke her heart. She knew Maddie had heard every word. Other children streamed past them into the building, their backpacks bouncing, their voices loud and carefree. But Maddie stood frozen, her feet seemingly glued to the concrete. "Mom?" Maddie's voice was barely a whisper. "Maybe I shouldn't go to art club today." Lily knelt down, bringing herself eye level with her daughter. Maddie's brown eyes, usually sparkling with creativity, were clouded with uncertainty. A few stray curls had escaped her careful morning braids. "Hey, sweetheart," Lily said softly, tucking those wayward strands behind Maddie's ear. "Why wouldn't you want to go to art club? You love drawing with Miss Peterson." Maddie's lower lip trembled slightly. "Katie said yesterday that I only got the new colored pencils because—" she swallowed hard. "Because Mr. Ethan feels sorry for us." The words hit Lily like a physical blow. She hadn't known about this, hadn't realized the adults' gossip had already filtered down to the children's level. Her protective instincts flared, but she forced herself to remain calm for Maddie's sake. "Look at me, sweetie," Lily said, gently tilting Maddie's chin up. "Your talent is yours. Nobody gave you that. Those pencils? They're just tools, like the brushes in art class or the crayons in your desk. It's what you create with them that matters." A few tears escaped down Maddie's cheeks. She quickly wiped them away with her mitten. "But what if they're right? What if?" "They're not right," Lily interrupted firmly. "You earned your spot in art club because Ms. Peterson saw how hard you work. Remember that landscape you did of the park, the one she hung in the hallway? A tiny smile flickered across Maddie's face. She said my trees looked real. They did look real, because you practiced, because you see things in a special way that's all your own. Lily pulled a tissue from her pocket and dabbed at Maddie's cheeks. Nobody can take that away from you. The first bell rang, its sharp peal cutting through the morning air. The remaining students began hurrying inside, including Sarah and Beth's children, who rushed past without a glance. Maddie took a deep breath, squaring her small shoulders. Will you look at my new drawing when you pick me up? Always, Lily promised. She stood up, brushing off her knees. And maybe we can stop for hot chocolate on the way home, with extra marshmallows? This earned her a real smile, small but genuine. Maddie nodded and started toward the door, then suddenly turned back and threw her arms around Lily's waist in a fierce hug. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Lily held her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and graphite pencils. I love you too, baby, so much. She watched as Maddie walked into the school, noting how her daughter's head was held high despite the weight of the whispers that seemed to follow her. Pride and pain warred in Lily's chest. The drive home was a blur. Inside their small kitchen, Lily sank into a chair at the table, the morning's encounter playing on repeat in her mind. The coffee she'd made earlier sat cold and forgotten in its mug. When Maddie had been born, Lily had promised herself that her daughter would never feel the sting of town gossip the way she had growing up. Yet here they were, facing the same small-minded judgments she'd hoped to spare her child from. The sound of the mail slot clicking drew her attention. Bills, probably. More worries to add to the pile. But when she went to collect the envelopes, she noticed Maddie had left her lunch bag on the counter. The girl would be hungry by noon. Lily quickly packed a new lunch, adding an extra cookie and a small note with a heart drawn on it. As she drove back to the school to drop it off, she couldn't stop thinking about those mothers by the bike rack, about how easily they wielded their words like weapons. Back home again, Lily stood in their small living room, looking at the wall where they'd hung Maddie's artwork. Landscapes, portraits, even a few abstract pieces that showed her daughter's evolving style. Each one represented hours of dedication, of Maddie working to capture what she saw in her mind's eye. The morning light caught on a particular drawing, one of their house, with both of them standing on the porch. Maddie had drawn them holding hands, smiling, strong together. The sight of it brought tears to Lily's eyes. When Maddie burst through the door that afternoon, her cheeks pink from the cold and her sketchbook bulging with new drawings, Lily was waiting. She opened her arms wide, and Maddie ran into them, dropping her backpack on the floor. We'll get through this, Lily promised, holding her daughter close. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Eleanor's front yard as two women in navy blazers climbed the porch steps. Their official badges caught the light. Behind them, a medical transport van idled in the driveway, its engine humming softly in the quiet neighborhood. Ethan stood in the doorway, his shoulders rigid as he watched the APS workers enter. His fingers gripped the doorframe so hard his knuckles went white. Lily lingered nearby, her heart aching as she watched Eleanor sitting in her favorite armchair, a small overnight bag packed at her feet. Mrs. Whitaker, the taller woman said gently, we have your room ready at Pine Grove Rehabilitation Center. It's just for evaluation, temporary while we sort everything out. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line as she gripped her wooden cane. I suppose there's no point arguing about it. Her voice was steady, but Lily caught the slight tremor in her hands. This is completely unnecessary, Ethan said, his voice tight with controlled anger. My grandmother is perfectly fine here, in her own home. The shorter APS worker consulted her clipboard. Mr. Whitaker, given the concerns raised about financial exploitation and your grandmother's welfare, we need to conduct a thorough evaluation in a controlled setting. Lily watched as Eleanor slowly rose from her chair, her cane tapping against the hardwood floor. The sound seemed to echo in the tense silence. She'd brought soup to this house so many times, watched Eleanor and Maddie looking through old photo albums in that very chair. Now it felt wrong, seeing strangers in this familiar space. Eleanor, let me get your coat, Lily offered, moving to the closet. She helped the older woman into her worn blue wool coat, the same one she'd worn to church every Sunday for years. "Thank you, dear," Eleanor said softly. Her eyes met Lily's, and there was both resignation and determination in them. "Would you water my African violets while I'm gone? They need attention twice a week." "Of course," Lily whispered, her throat tight. Ethan picked up the overnight bag, his movements mechanical. "I'll drive behind the van," he said. "Make sure everything's properly set up at Pine Grove." The APS workers exchanged glances. "That won't be necessary tonight, Mr. Whitaker. We need to get Mrs. Whitaker settled first, and visiting hours start tomorrow at 9. Lily saw Ethan's jaw clench, a muscle ticking there. She knew how much it cost him to stay silent, to not argue or fight. Eleanor patted Ethan's arm as she passed him. "It's all right, dear. I've survived worse than a few nights in a strange bed." She turned to the APS workers. "Though I hope you ladies realize I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions about my life and my grandson." The women guided Eleanor down the porch steps, one on each side. Lily's chest tightened as she watched Eleanor's slow, careful descent. The setting sun painted everything in shades of amber and long shadows, making the scene feel almost surreal. When they helped Eleanor into the van, Ethan took an involuntary step forward, then stopped himself. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Lily stood beside him as the van pulled away, its taillights growing smaller until they disappeared around the corner. The street felt suddenly empty, the house behind them too quiet. "This is my fault," Ethan said, his voice rough. "If I'd just been open about everything from the start." "Don't," Lily interrupted. "You were trying to protect people, to help without making a show of it." He turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes made her heart ache. "And look where that got us. The trust is frozen. Eleanor's been taken away. The rec center project is stalled. And you," he ran a hand through his hair in frustration, "your ex is using this whole mess against you in court." They went back inside, the house feeling hollow without Eleanor's presence. Her half-finished crossword puzzle still lay on the side table, reading glasses folded nearby. The African violets sat in their usual spot by the window, their purple blooms bright against the growing dusk. Ethan paced the living room, tension radiating from every movement. "Maybe I should just leave town," he said finally, stopping by the mantel where family photos stretched back decades. "If I'm gone, the gossip will die down. Eleanor can come home. You won't have to worry about Caleb's custody challenge." Lily looked at him sharply. "You can't be serious." "I am." He picked up a photo of himself as a boy, standing proud next to Eleanor. "I came back to help, to try and make things right. Instead, I've made everything worse. And what about Eleanor? She needs you here. She survived decades without me. She's stronger than anyone knows." He set the photo down carefully. "Maybe it's better if I just go. Let things get back to normal." Lily wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the defeated slump of his shoulders stopped her. This was Ethan Whitaker, who'd built a successful company, who'd quietly helped so many people, and now he looked lost in his own grandmother's living room. The last rays of sunlight slipped away outside, leaving them in the growing darkness of Eleanor's empty house. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking time in a space that suddenly felt unmoored from everything familiar. "I'll check on the violets tomorrow," Lily said quietly, knowing there was nothing else she could say right now that would make any difference. Ethan nodded, still staring at the family photos, his expression distant. "Thank you," he said softly. "For everything." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with finality, as the shadows lengthened and the house grew darker around them. The morning light filtered weakly through the diner's front windows as Lily tied her apron. The familiar scent of coffee and maple syrup filled the air, but something felt off. Betty, the manager, motioned her over to the counter with a grim expression. "Can we talk in the back for a minute, hon?" Betty's voice was gentle but firm. Lily's stomach tightened as she followed Betty through the swinging doors into the small office. The cramped space felt even smaller as Betty perched on the edge of her desk. "Look, Lily, you know I think the world of you. Betty twisted her hands together. "But with all this talk going around about the Whitakers and that foundation, some of our regulars are asking questions." Lily's throat went dry. "Questions about what?" "About you being mixed up in it all." Betty sighed heavily. "I need to cut your hours back for a while, just until things settle down and people stop talking." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Lily absorbed the news. "But Betty, I haven't done anything wrong. I just helped a neighbor." "I know that, honey, but perception is everything in a small town." Betty's face was etched with genuine regret. "I can keep you on for breakfast, Rush, but that's all I can promise right now." Lily nodded mechanically, her mind already racing to calculate bills and rent with reduced hours. The custody case loomed large in her thoughts. "I understand," she managed, though she didn't, not really. The rest of her shortened shift passed in a blur. By late afternoon, Lily found herself walking the familiar path to Eleanor's house. The empty windows stared back at her like sad eyes. She spotted Ethan's truck in the driveway and climbed the porch steps. He answered her knock looking haggard, his usual neat appearance rumpled. "Lily, come in." The house felt hollow without Eleanor's presence. Lily followed him to the kitchen, where papers were scattered across the table. "I lost hours at the diner today," she said without preamble. "Because of the rumors. Because of the secrets." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry about that. I never meant—" "I know what you meant," Lily cut in, her voice rising slightly. "You meant to protect people, to help quietly. But can't you see? The secrecy made everything worse." "What was I supposed to do?" Ethan pushed back from the table, running a hand through his hair. "Start announcing to everyone that I had money? Have people lined up around the block with their hands out?" "No. But maybe if you'd been honest from the start." "Honest?" He gave a sharp laugh. "Like this town was honest with my father? Like they were honest about why he really left? That was different." "Was it?" Ethan paced the kitchen. "You saw those letters, Lily. You know how this town treats anyone who doesn't fit their neat little boxes. The minute they knew I had money, everything would have changed." "It changed anyway." Lily's voice cracked. "But now it's worse because you hid it. Now they think you're manipulating Eleanor. Now they're questioning everyone who's been near you, including me." "I was trying to protect you too," he said, his voice softer. "You and Maddie. Eleanor. Everyone. We didn't need protection, Ethan." Lily's anger deflated into exhaustion. "We needed truth. The court date for Maddie's custody is coming up, and now I look unstable because I'm associated with all this drama. My hours are cut. The whole town is whispering." Ethan stopped pacing, his shoulders slumping. "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to help without the complications that money brings, without people treating me differently." "People are treating you differently now anyway," Lily said quietly. "And they're treating everyone around you differently too. Your secrecy didn't just protect you, it hurt everyone else." The truth of her words hung heavy in the air between them. Outside, a car door slammed, making them both jump. "I should go," Ethan said finally. "I need to make some calls about Eleanor's situation." Lily watched him gather his papers with trembling hands. He paused at the kitchen doorway. "I really am sorry, Lily, for all of it." After he left, Lily sat alone at her kitchen table, the room too quiet without Maddie, who was at a friend's house. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, marking time in a world that suddenly felt off balance. Her reduced schedule at the diner would barely cover groceries, let alone help fight the custody battle. The silence pressed in around her, heavy with questions she couldn't answer. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through Eleanor's kitchen windows as Lily fumbled with her spare key. The house felt different without Eleanor's presence, hollow and too quiet. Even the familiar creak of the front door seemed louder, more intrusive. "Remember, careful steps," Lily reminded Maddie as they entered. "We're just checking the pipes and making sure everything's okay." Maddie nodded solemnly, her small hand gripping her ever-present sketchbook. The 9-year-old had been unusually quiet since Eleanor's removal to the rehab facility. She wandered into the kitchen while Lily checked the bathroom pipes, running her fingers along the worn countertops where she'd watched Eleanor bake countless times. The kitchen still held Eleanor's Essence cards tucked into cookbook pages, the collection of mismatched spice tins lined up on their rack, the wooden stool where Maddie used to perch while Eleanor told stories. Everything was exactly as they'd left it, frozen in time like a museum exhibit. Lily finished her inspection and joined Maddie in the kitchen. "All good in the bathroom. Let's check under the sink here, and then we can head home." As Lily crouched to examine the kitchen pipes, Maddie reached for the familiar star-shaped cookie tin that always held Eleanor's ginger snaps. "Mom, look, there's something behind the spices." Lily straightened up, watching as Maddie carefully moved aside the old tin of nutmeg. There, wedged against the wall, was a thick manila envelope, its corners soft with age. "Should we look?" Maddie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily hesitated. The envelope wasn't sealed, and if there was anything important inside that could help Eleanor. "Yes, but carefully. We'll put everything back exactly as we found it." They sat at Eleanor's kitchen table, where they'd shared so many meals. The familiar check tablecloth felt rough under Lily's palms as she gently opened the envelope. Inside were several documents, the paper crisp and official-looking. The first page bore a notary's stamp from 6 months ago. Lily's eyes widened as she read the heading, "Advance Healthcare Directive and Designation of Healthcare Advocates." Her hands trembled slightly as she continued reading. There, in Eleanor's neat handwriting, were their names: Ethan Whitaker and Lily Hart, listed as joint healthcare advocates. Eleanor had trusted them both with her care, long before any of the current troubles began. But there was more. The second document was a personal letter, also notarized, dated around the same time. Eleanor's words flowed across the page. "To whom it may concern. I, Eleanor Whitaker, being of sound mind, wish to affirm that my grandson Ethan's financial decisions, including his anonymous charitable giving through the Quiet Blessings Foundation, are made with my full knowledge and blessing. His choice to help others privately, without recognition, brings me joy and honors our family's true legacy, not of wealth, but of service. I have witnessed his careful stewardship of both his fortune and his commitment to this community. Any suggestion that he has acted to influence or control me is false. His only influence has been to show me that old wounds can heal through quiet acts of kindness." Lily had to pause, her vision blurring. Maddie leaned against her shoulder, reading along. The letter continued, detailing Eleanor's pride in Ethan's work with veterans, her appreciation of Lily's friendship, and her hopes for the town's healing. "Mom," Maddie whispered, "this proves Ethan was telling the truth. This proves everything." Lily nodded, carefully gathering the papers. Here was Eleanor's voice, clear and strong, cutting through all the rumors and suspicion. Here was the truth, hidden away, like a seed, waiting for the right moment to sprout. The kitchen felt different now, less empty. Lily could almost hear Eleanor's voice, practical and wise. Sometimes the truth needs to sit quiet for a while, like bread dough rising. But it always comes out in the end. They returned the papers to their envelope and tucked it back behind the spice tin, exactly as they'd found it. But now, they carried its knowledge with them, proof of trust, given freely, of kindness chosen deliberately, of love expressed through both words and silent actions. As they locked up the house, the setting sun painted the windows gold. Maddie paused on the porch, looking back. "Eleanor knew people would need to know the truth someday," she said softly. "That's why she left it where we'd find it." Lily squeezed her daughter's shoulder, marveling at her insight. They had found more than just papers today. They had found Eleanor's voice, her truth, and maybe, just maybe, a way to make things right. The morning sun warmed Lily's face as she walked up Mr. Nettles' worn concrete path. His small ranch house sat at the end of Maple Street, its faded green paint and meticulously kept flower beds a familiar sight in the neighborhood. She clutched Eleanor's envelope in her hand, her heart beating faster with each step. Mr. Nettles was already on his porch, as if expecting her. He sat in his usual wooden rocker, newspaper spread across his lap. His prosthetic leg caught the sunlight, and he adjusted it with practiced ease. "Morning, Miss Hart," he called out, his voice gruff but kind. "Figured you might stop by after all this ruckus." Lily climbed the 3 steps to his porch. "Mr. Nettles, I hope I'm not bothering you." "Nonsense." He folded his newspaper carefully. "Been meaning to speak up anyway. This whole business with young Whitaker, it ain't right, what they're saying about him." Lily settled into the spare chair he gestured to. "That's actually why I'm here. I found some documents at Eleanor's, but I need to understand more." Mr. Nettles nodded slowly, his weathered face thoughtful. "Let me tell you something about Ethan Whitaker. 2 years ago, my prosthetic was giving me trouble. Medicare wouldn't cover the maintenance, and I was about ready to give up walking altogether." He patted his leg. "Then one day, I get a letter from the VA. Said a special veterans fund would cover all my prosthetic care past, present, and future." "The Quiet Blessings Foundation?" Lily asked softly. "That's right." Mr. Nettles leaned forward. "Didn't know it was Ethan then. Found out by accident when I saw him leaving the VA office one day. He tried to brush it off, asked me to keep it quiet, said the help meant more when folks didn't feel beholden to anyone." A car passed by slowly, and Mr. Blank. Nettles waited until it was gone before continuing. "You know how many vets in this town got similar letters? At least a dozen. Man's been taking care of his own, no fanfare, no recognition." Lily absorbed this information, thinking of Ethan's discomfort whenever anyone tried to thank him. "Why didn't you say something when all this started?" "Respect," Mr. Nettles said simply. "Man asks for privacy. He's earned it." "But now?" He shook his head. "Now they're painting him as some kind of vulture. That's not right. Not right at all." As if on cue, Mrs. Alvarez's distinct voice called from the sidewalk. "Lily Hart! Just the person I need to see." She hustled up the path, a large leather-bound ledger tucked under her arm, her silver hair catching the morning light. "Mrs. Alvarez." Mr. Nettles acknowledged with a nod. "Morton," she returned, then turned to Lily. "I've been going through the church records. Couldn't sleep last night, thinking about all this nonsense. Look here." She opened the ledger, pointing to neat columns of numbers and dates. "These are donation records?" Lily asked, leaning closer. "Anonymous ones. Going back 5 years long before Ethan came home." Mrs. Alvarez's finger traced down the page. "New roof for the church. Heating system for the shelter. Food bank supplies every month like clockwork. All from different foundations, but I did some digging. They all trace back to the same source." Lily studied the entries, each one representing a quiet act of kindness. "How did you figure it out?" Mrs. Alvarez's eyes softened. "I've been church treasurer for 30 years, child. I know how to follow the money. Besides," she added, "I remembered something his grandmother told me years ago, about how young Ethan always gave away his allowance to kids who couldn't afford lunch. Some things don't change, they just grow bigger." Mr. Nettles cleared his throat. "Been meaning to ask, Lily. How's your girl handling all this?" "Maddie's." Lily paused, thinking of her daughter's worried face. "She's confused, hurt, the other kids at school." "Children can be cruel without meaning to be," Mrs. Alvarez said quietly. "Their parents' words become their weapons." A gentle breeze stirred the wind chimes on Mr. Nettles' porch, their soft music filling the thoughtful silence. "Pastor Ruth is organizing a town meeting," Mrs. Alvarez mentioned, closing the ledger carefully. "Tomorrow evening at the church." Lily looked at the envelope in her hand, then at the ledger, thinking of Mr. Nettles' story, all these pieces of truth, waiting to be shared. She thought of Eleanor, alone in that rehab facility. Of Ethan, carrying the weight of others' judgments. Of Maddie, learning hard lessons about how quickly people could turn on each other. "I'll be there," she said firmly. "And I think it's time everyone heard the whole story." Mr. Nettles straightened in his chair. "Count me in. Some things need saying out loud." "The truth usually does," Mrs. Alvarez agreed, patting the ledger. "Especially when it's been quiet for too long." Lily stood, feeling the weight of Eleanor's envelope like a promise in her hand. Tomorrow she would bring all of it to light the letters, the records, the testimonies. The real story of a man who had tried to help his hometown heal, one anonymous gift at a time. "Thank you both," she said sincerely, "for being willing to speak up." "Thank you for bringing that soup in the first place," Mrs. Alvarez replied with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the smallest kindness starts the biggest changes." The old fellowship hall hummed with whispered conversations and shuffling feet. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden floors. Metal folding chairs creaked under the weight of what seemed like half the town. Up front, Pastor Ruth stood beside a rickety podium, her weathered hands smoothing her cardigan. In the front row, the APS investigator sat with a leather portfolio balanced on her knee, her expression neutral but attentive. 2 rows back, the blogger hunched over his laptop, fingers hovering over the keys. Lily noticed how he seemed smaller somehow, less sure of himself than when his exposé first hit the internet. Eleanor sat near the front in her favorite floral dress, brought specially from the rehab facility. Her cane rested against her chair, and despite everything, her eyes held their usual warmth. Beside her, Maddie clutched her sketchbook, occasionally glancing up at her mother with worried eyes. Lily's hands trembled as she gripped the edges of her note cards. She hadn't planned to speak first, but Pastor Ruth had insisted. "Start with the truth as you know it," she'd said. "Sometimes the simplest stories carry the most weight." The room fell silent as Lily approached the microphone. Its stand squeaked as she adjusted it, the sound echoing through the speakers. She took a deep breath, the familiar scent of coffee and old hymnals steadying her nerves. "Most of you know me from the diner," she began, her voice shaky at first but growing stronger. "I'm the one who usually remembers if you like your eggs over easy or scrambled, if you take cream in your coffee. But this story starts with soup." A few gentle chuckles rippled through the crowd. Lily continued, "It was one of those awful sleet storms we get, the kind that rattles windows and makes you check on your neighbors. I hadn't seen Eleanor's lights on all day, so I made some chicken and stars soup, the kind my grandmother used to make." She glanced at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. "That's when I met Ethan Whitaker. He was standing in Eleanor's doorway, looking tired and wary, like someone who'd carried a heavy weight for too long." The APS investigator leaned forward slightly, pen poised over her notepad. "Over the next few weeks, I saw small kindnesses happening around town. Mr. Nettles got his prosthetic maintenance covered. The church roof was mysteriously repaired. Bills got paid. And yes, Eleanor's mortgage was handled quietly, keeping her in the home she's lived in for 50 years. Lily pulled out Eleanor's notarized letter, holding it up. "I found this in Eleanor's kitchen, dated months before any of this controversy started." It's her own words, explaining that she knew about Ethan's foundation, that she approved of his anonymous giving, that it was her choice to let him help, not just her, but others too. Mrs. Alvarez stood up then, clutching a thick ledger. "If I may," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Our church records show anonymous donations matching Ethan's pattern going back 3 years, long before he came home. Veterans support groups in other towns, medical bills, education funds. Always quiet, always through proper channels." Mr. Nettles pushed himself to his feet, his prosthetic leg catching the light. "That foundation helped me walk again," he said gruffly. "Never asked for anything in return. Never wanted recognition." The blogger's typing had stopped. He stared at his screen, shoulders hunched. Lily continued, her voice stronger now. "I understand why people were suspicious. In a small town, secrets feel dangerous. But sometimes—" She paused, looking directly at Ethan, who sat with his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "Sometimes people keep secrets not to hurt, but because they're afraid of changing the pure intention of their giving." The APS investigator was writing rapidly now, her professional mask slipping to reveal interest. "I'm not here to defend secrecy," Lily said, "but I am here to defend kindness, even when it comes in unexpected packages. I'm here because one bowl of soup led me to discover something rare, someone who had the means to help and chose to do it without fanfare or credit." Pastor Ruth stepped forward then, laying a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "Ethan," she said softly. "Would you like to speak?" The room held its breath as Ethan slowly stood. He walked to the microphone, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Up close, Lily could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands shook slightly as he gripped the podium. "Yes," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I am the founder of Quiet Blessings Foundation." The words seemed to cost him, but once started, they came easier. "When I sold my Veterans Logistics app, I promised myself the money would go back to the communities that helped build it, including this one." He looked at Eleanor, his voice softening. "My grandmother taught me that true giving doesn't need applause." "My father." He swallowed hard. "My father was judged harshly by this town once, for loving someone they didn't approve of. I learned then that people's opinions can twist even the purest intentions." The blogger's laptop closed with a soft click. "So, yes, I kept it quiet. Maybe too quiet. I wanted the focus to be on the help itself, not on me or the Whitaker name or any obligations. Every grant, every bill paid, every repair, it was all properly documented, legally processed, and done with the recipient's knowledge and consent." He pulled out a thick folder. "I have all the paperwork here." The APS investigator stood, walking forward to accept the folder. "Mr. Whitaker," she said clearly, "would you be willing to walk us through your foundation's structure and oversight measures?" Ethan nodded, relief visible in his shoulders. "Everything's there. Board members, grant criteria, financial trails. We can go through it all." The fellowship hall fell silent as Eleanor made her entrance. She walked slowly but steadily, her cane tapping against the floorboards, head held high despite the whispers. The APS worker who'd accompanied her from the rehab facility hovered nearby, clipboard in hand. "I may be old," Eleanor announced, her voice carrying clearly across the room, "but I'm not addled, and I'm certainly not being controlled." She settled into a chair near the podium, smoothing her neat gray skirt. "My grandson Ethan has done nothing but honor my wishes." Lily stepped forward, clutching the envelope they'd found. "I have documents here, notarized months ago, that prove Eleanor made these decisions of her own free will." She handed them to the APS investigator, a woman named Ms. Chen, who studied them carefully. Pastor Ruth cleared her throat. "We have others here today who'd like to speak about Ethan's character and actions in our community." Mr. Nettles stood shakily, leaning on his cane. "That young man paid for my prosthetic maintenance when the VA was dragging their feet. Never asked for recognition. Never wanted his name mentioned." He thumped his cane for emphasis. "That's not manipulation, that's mercy." Mrs. Alvarez approached next, carrying a stack of leather-bound ledgers. "Church records," she explained, spreading them on a table. "Anonymous donations going back years, long before Ethan returned. Same amounts, same timing, helping families who lost mill jobs." She looked directly at the blogger, who seemed to shrink in his seat. "I was wrong about the Whitakers forgetting us." This one remembered. More townspeople stood to share stories, college scholarships appearing mysteriously, medical bills quietly settled, small businesses saved by anonymous grants. The evidence mounted, painting a picture not of manipulation, but of careful, considerate giving. Ms. Chen reviewed the documentation methodically, consulting with a colleague. The room waited, tension thick in the air. Finally, she approached the podium. "Based on our investigation and the overwhelming evidence presented today, we find no basis for concern regarding Eleanor Whitaker's welfare or decision-making capacity." She turned to face Ethan. "The protective order is lifted. Mrs. Whitaker can return home immediately." Relief swept through the room. Eleanor's eyes glistened as she reached for Ethan's hand. Ms. Chen continued. "Furthermore, we'll be recommending the bank release all frozen assets. The Quiet Blessings Foundation's activities appear to be both legal and ethically sound." The blogger slipped out a side door, but nobody paid him much attention. They were too busy surrounding Eleanor and Ethan, offering apologies and welcome homes. 3 days later, Lily sat in the county courthouse, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The family court judge peered over her reading glasses at the stack of documents before her. "Mr. Morgan, she addressed Caleb, who sat stiffly in his suit. "Your emergency motion cited concerns about Miss Hart's associations and stability. However, the evidence shows quite the opposite." She shuffled through some papers. Multiple character witnesses from the community, steady employment history, and strong community ties. The judge looked directly at Caleb. Furthermore, this court doesn't look kindly on attempts to use temporary community confusion to gain tactical advantage in custody matters. She set down her papers with finality. The emergency motion is denied. The existing custody arrangement will stand. Lily released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Across the aisle, Caleb's shoulders slumped slightly, but he nodded in acceptance. "Thank you, Your Honor," Lily said quietly, gathering her things. The weight of weeks of worry lifted from her shoulders as she walked out into the bright winter sunshine. Back at Eleanor's house that evening, the kitchen windows glowed warm against the early darkness. Eleanor sat at her familiar spot at the table, Maddie beside her, both bent over Maddie's latest drawing. The sound of their gentle laughter drifted through the rooms like music. The old house felt alive again, filled with the scent of brewing coffee and the soft creak of footsteps on familiar floorboards. Eleanor was home where she belonged, and Lily had kept what mattered most, her daughter and her place in this patchwork community that had proven stronger than suspicion. The March sun broke through lingering winter clouds as Lily pulled into the rec center's parking lot. Where broken asphalt had once crumbled, fresh gravel crunched under her tires. The building's facade, recently power-washed, revealed warm red brick that had been hidden under decades of grime. Inside, the musty smell of abandonment had given way to fresh paint and sawdust. Volunteers moved purposefully through the halls, carrying supplies and calling out friendly greetings. Mrs. Alvarez directed a group arranging folding tables in what would become the dining area, while Mr. Nettles and his son installed new light fixtures. Lily paused in the entrance, taking it all in. Just last week, this place had been frozen in limbo, wrapped in caution tape and uncertainty. Now it hummed with activity and possibility. "Mom, look!" Maddie's voice echoed from down the hall. "They're putting up my signs." Following her daughter's voice, Lily found Maddie watching two volunteers hanging colorful posters she'd designed. "Art classes every Saturday," proclaimed one in cheerful rainbow letters. Another advertised Veterans Coffee Hour, with carefully drawn stars and stripes. "Those look beautiful, honey," Lily said, squeezing Maddie's shoulder. "You've got a real talent." "Thanks," Maddie beamed. "Mr. Whitaker said I could help design the big sign for outside, too." As if summoned by his name, Ethan appeared from the office, sleeves rolled up and a streak of paint on his forearm. His usual reserve had softened these past few days, replaced by quiet determination. "Lily?" he nodded, offering a small smile. "I'm glad you're here. Want to see your office?" "My office?" Lily followed him down the freshly painted hallway. "That seems fancy for a part-time coordinator position." "You'll need a proper space to work from," Ethan said, stopping at a door near the main entrance. "Plus, it lets you keep an eye on who's coming and going." The room wasn't large, but sunlight streamed through a newly cleaned window, warming the space. A simple desk faced the door, with a comfortable chair and a small bookshelf against one wall. Someone had placed a potted plant on the windowsill. Spider plant, hard to kill, Lily noted with appreciation. "It's perfect," she said, running her hand along the desk's smooth surface. "Though I still can't believe you want me to coordinate the programs here. I'm just a waitress." "You're just the person who saw someone needed soup and brought it," Ethan corrected quietly. "Who noticed when Eleanor needed help with her window? Who stood up in front of the whole town to defend the truth?" He paused, looking slightly embarrassed by his own earnestness. "That's exactly the kind of person this place needs." A commotion from the main hall drew their attention. Pastor Ruth had arrived with several church volunteers, carrying boxes of donated kitchen supplies. The pastor's laugh carried down the hallway as she directed traffic. "The kitchen inspection is scheduled for next week," Ethan said. "Once that's cleared, we can start the meal program." Lily nodded, already making mental notes. I've been thinking about that. We could do lunch 3 days a week to start, see how the demand is, and maybe cooking classes in the evening? There are lots of folks who could use some basic skills. Add it to the proposal list. Ethan agreed. Speaking of which, he hesitated, then continued, I'd like you to help review the first round of grant applications. Me? Lily blinked in surprise. But surely there are people more qualified. You know this community, Ethan interrupted. You see people, really see them. That's worth more than any fancy degree. He pulled a folder from his back pocket. These are the first batch of applications for the Quiet Blessings Foundation. Small business loans, medical bills, education funds. I'd value your perspective on where the money could do the most good. Lily took the folder, touched by his trust. Through the window she could see more volunteers arriving, carrying lumber for the handicap ramp they'd be building this weekend. Maddie had joined MrsBA.com. Alvarez carefully arranging art supplies in a storage cabinet. Remember what Eleanor's letter said? Lily asked softly. So the blessing stays a blessing. I think this is what she meant, not just giving help, but building something lasting, something that brings people together. Ethan nodded, emotion flickering across his usually guarded face. Would you like to get coffee tomorrow morning? We can go through the applications together. I'd like that, Lily said. She gestured to the bustle of activity around them. But for now, I think we'd better get back out there. That ramp won't build itself. No, it won't, Ethan agreed. He paused at the door. Thank you, Lily, for everything. Lily watched him head outside to help unload lumber, then turned to her new desk. She set down her purse and pulled out a pen, ready to start making lists of all that needed doing. Through her open door, she could hear Maddie's laugh, mixing with the sounds of hammering and friendly conversation, the music of something broken being rebuilt, together. Spring sunlight streamed through the freshly washed windows of the rec center, casting warm rectangles across the polished wooden floors. The newly painted sign above the entrance read, Soup, Second Chances, in cheerful blue letters, with a steaming bowl as its logo. Maddie's design, proudly implemented by the local sign maker. Inside the main hall, the transformation was stunning. Gone were the cobwebs and musty corners. Instead, round tables dotted the space, each with a small vase of daffodils from Mrs. Alvarez's garden. The soup kitchen counter gleamed with stainless steel warmers, and the aroma of fresh bread and chicken noodle soup wafted through the air. In one corner, Mr. Nettles sat with 3 other veterans, their coffee cups creating rings on the table as they swapped stories. His prosthetic leg, now properly maintained, thanks to the Foundation's support, rested comfortably as he gestured animatedly about his time in the service. And then, he chuckled, tapping his spoon against his cup, the sergeant says, "That's not a radio, that's a toaster." The group erupted in laughter, their joy echoing off the walls. Down the hallway, in what used to be a storage closet but was now a bright art room, Maddie stood before her first official class. 6 kids sat at easels, their tongues poking out in concentration as they followed her instructions on mixing colors. Their paint-splattered smocks, donated by the craft store downtown, protected their clothes as they created. "Remember," Maddie said, holding up her brush with the confidence of a seasoned teacher despite being only 9, "green and purple make brown, but not the good kind of brown. Trust me. I learned that the hard way." Lily watched from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride. Her daughter had bloomed in this space, finding her voice as she shared her passion for art. The scholarship fund Ethan had established meant any child could attend, regardless of their family's means. In the computer lab, elderly residents clicked away at keyboards under the patient guidance of high school volunteers. Mrs. Wilson, who had never touched a computer before, beamed as she successfully sent her first email to her granddaughter in Colorado. The sound of Eleanor's cane tapping against the floor drew Lily's attention. The older woman made her way down the hall, looking stronger than ever after her return from the rehab facility. She paused to admire the wall of photographs. Images of the town's history, including several of the old mills where her late husband had worked. "Just look at this place," Eleanor marveled, her eyes bright. "Who would have thought one pot of soup could lead to all this?" Lily smiled, remembering that sleet-filled evening months ago. Sometimes the smallest kindness starts an avalanche. Outside, cars began filling the parking lot. The whole town seemed to be arriving for the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. Pastor Ruth helped set up folding chairs on the front lawn, while the church choir arranged themselves on the newly built ramp. Accessibility had been one of Ethan's non-negotiable requirements. Ethan himself stood near the entrance, looking more relaxed than Lily had ever seen him. His secret was out now, but instead of judgment, he'd found acceptance. The town had embraced both his generosity and his desire to honor his grandmother's wishes. He wore a simple blue button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up, no more hiding behind formality. The Trust's advisory board, consisting of Eleanor and 5 other community elders, sat in chairs of honor near the ribbon. They had already approved the first round of grants: medical equipment for homebound seniors, art supplies for the schools, and emergency repair funds for struggling families. Everything would be done in the open now, with the community's input and blessing. Mrs. Alvarez bustled around with a tray of cookies, insisting everyone take at least 2. "These are my special recipe," she told anyone who would listen. "The same ones I made for the first community dinner here." She had become one of the center's most ardent supporters, her initial suspicion of the Whitakers transformed into fierce loyalty. The choir began warming up, their harmonies floating on the spring breeze. They would sing "Amazing Grace," Eleanor's choice, after the ribbon cutting. Among them stood some of the same people who had once whispered about Ethan's motives. Now they sang about second chances, with genuine feeling. Maddie's art students lined up with their parents, clutching their still-wet paintings. They had insisted on creating something special for the opening, and each canvas showed their vision of community, holding hands, sharing meals, helping neighbors. Their artwork would hang in the center's main hallway, the first of many exhibitions to come. Mr. Nettles and his veteran friends had positioned themselves near the front, medals pinned to their jackets. The center would serve as their meeting place now, a space where they could find both companionship and practical support. The logistics app Ethan had created would help coordinate their medical appointments and benefits, with trained volunteers ready to assist with paperwork. As the appointed hour approached, Eleanor rose from her chair, her cane steady beneath her hand. The crowd quieted. She made her way to the ribbon, its blue length fluttering in the breeze. Ethan stood to one side, Lily to the other, the 3 of them united by soup, trust, and the power of quiet giving. The choir began to sing, their voices rising clear and true in the spring air. Eleanor's cane tapped in time with the melody as she raised the scissors, ready to cut the ribbon and officially open a place where second chances would always be on the menu. The evening settled softly over the town, wrapping familiar streets in gentle shadows. Lily walked up Eleanor's well-worn path, the weight of the soup pot warming her hands against the lingering spring chill. Steam curled from beneath the lid, carrying the comforting scent of chicken and stars, Eleanor's favorite. The porch light clicked on before she reached the steps, casting its welcoming glow across weathered boards. Eleanor must have been watching from her favorite window seat. The light caught the fresh paint on the porch railings, a weekend project that had brought together neighbors with brushes and stories to share. Lily had barely set the pot down on the small table when she heard familiar footsteps approaching. Ethan emerged from the growing dusk, carrying a stack of ceramic bowls that caught the porch light's gleam. His sleeves were rolled up, showing traces of paint from the day's work at the rec center. "Perfect timing," he said, his voice carrying the easy warmth that had gradually replaced his earlier guardedness. "I could smell that soup from down the street." "It's still Grandma's recipe," Lily replied, lifting the lid as wisps of steam escaped into the cool air. "Though Eleanor swears it tastes better when someone else makes it." The screen door creaked open, and Eleanor appeared, moving carefully but steadily with her cane. "That's because food made with love always does," she said, settling into her cushioned porch chair. And don't either of you try to argue with me about that." Maddie slipped out behind Eleanor, her ever-present sketchbook tucked under one arm. She'd spent the afternoon at the rec center's first art class, teaching younger kids how to draw simple animals. Now she curled up on the porch swing, pencil already moving across a fresh page. Ethan distributed the bowls while Lily ladled out portions, the familiar routine feeling like a dance they'd practiced for years rather than months. The soup's aroma mixed with the scent of spring flowers from Eleanor's garden boxes, creating a moment of pure contentment. "The rec center looked beautiful today," Lily said, passing Eleanor her bowl. "I still can't believe how many people showed up to help with the final touches. Even Mrs. Alvarez stayed late to arrange those daffodils," Ethan added, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Quite a change from when she used to eye me suspiciously at church." Eleanor chuckled, stirring her soup. "That woman has opinions stronger than my morning coffee, but once she decides you're good people, she's loyal as they come." The porch swing creaked gently as Maddie swung, her pencil scratching quietly against paper. The evening air carried distant sounds of children playing, screen doors closing, and the occasional car passing, the peaceful symphony of small-town life winding down for the day. "Have you thought more about the summer programs?" Eleanor asked, glancing between Lily and Ethan. The veterans group seemed excited about hosting weekly dinners. Lily nodded, warming her hands around her bowl. "Mr. Nettles already has a sign-up sheet for cooking volunteers. Though he insists his chili recipe stays secret." "Speaking of secrets," Ethan said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I wanted to show you both something." He pulled out a small stack of papers, grant applications for the next round of Quiet Blessings funding. "I thought maybe we could review these together. There's no one I trust more to help make these decisions." The simple statement hung in the air, weighted with meaning. Trust. The very thing that had once been so scarce between them now flowed as naturally as the soup they shared. Maddie looked up from her sketchbook. "Can I help too? I know lots of kids who could use art supplies." "Of course you can, sweetheart," Eleanor said, reaching over to pat Maddie's knee. "Your artwork is all over the rec center walls already. I'd say you're our resident expert." They fell into comfortable conversation, discussing ideas for the center's future between spoonfuls of soup. Lily watched as Maddie's pencil moved across her page, capturing the scene before her, the rec center's new sign, children painting at easels, veterans sharing coffee and stories at round tables. The porch light cast its steady glow over them all, a beacon of warmth in the gathering dusk. Like the soup they shared, it spoke of simple comforts and lasting connections, of a community healing and growing stronger together. "Look," Maddie said suddenly, turning her sketchbook around. On the page, she'd drawn the rec center's main room, filled with people gathered around long tables, sunlight streaming through the windows. Every face wore a smile, and in the corner, she'd drawn a small steaming bowl, their symbol of welcome and new beginnings. Eleanor leaned forward to study the drawing, her eyes bright. "Now that," she said softly, "is exactly what we hoped for, isn't it?" Ethan reached for the soup pot, refilling bowls, as they continued talking quietly about plans for the center, about upcoming events, about the simple joy of sharing meals and moments together. The evening wrapped around them like a comfortable blanket, full of possibility and peace. The three of them settled into the familiar rhythm of an evening on Eleanor's porch. Lily ladled the steaming soup into the blue ceramic bowls Ethan had brought, their surfaces worn smooth from years of use. The porch light cast a gentle glow over them all, creating a cozy bubble against the cool spring evening. "Just like that first night," Eleanor said, accepting her bowl with a warm smile. "Though considerably less stormy, thank heavens." Maddie perched on the porch swing, her sketchbook balanced on her knees as she alternated between spoonfuls of soup and quick pencil strokes. The swing's gentle creaking mixed with the evening crickets, starting their nightly chorus. "The stars are perfect tonight," Ethan observed, glancing up at the clearing sky. He'd rolled up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than Lily had ever seen him. Gone was the guarded expression he'd worn when they'd first met. Eleanor tapped her spoon against her bowl. "Remember when you were little, Ethan? You used to count the stars from this very spot." "I did," he chuckled. "And you'd tell me there was one star for every kind deed in the world." "Still true," Eleanor said with a knowing look at Lily. "Some of them just shine a little brighter than others." Lily blew on a spoonful of soup, watching the steam dance in the porch light. "Like soup on a cold night?" "Like soup on a cold night," Eleanor agreed. "And rec centers that bring communities together." Maddie looked up from her sketchbook. "And art classes where nobody gets teased anymore." The adults exchanged glances, remembering how far they'd come from those difficult days. The soup's warmth seemed to reach deeper than their stomachs, touching something fundamental about belonging and healing. "The veterans group is starting next week," Ethan said, reaching for a second helping. "Mr. Nettles is leading the first session, said he never thought he'd be teaching others how to navigate the system." "From struggling with his prosthetic appointments to helping others?" Lily mused. "That's what second chances look like." Eleanor's eyes twinkled. "Speaking of second chances, Pastor Ruth mentioned the Summer Festival Committee needs volunteers. Something about organizing the soup contest." "Really, Eleanor?" Lily laughed. "Are you suggesting I might have some expertise in that area?" "Well, you did start quite the soup revolution in this town," Ethan teased, his shoulder brushing against Lily's as he reached for the ladle. The touch was casual, comfortable, worlds away from their careful distance during the custody hearings and town meetings. Now, it felt as natural as the evening breeze carrying the scent of Eleanor's blooming lilacs. Maddie held up her sketchbook, showing her latest drawing. She'd captured them all on the porch, but she'd expanded the scene to include the whole town gathering around one long table that stretched down Main Street. Steam rose from countless bowls, connecting everyone under the stars. "Oh, sweetheart," Eleanor breathed, leaning forward to see better. "You've got your mother's gift for seeing the heart of things." "It's for the rec center wall," Maddie explained. "To go next to the ribbon-cutting photo." "Perfect spot for it," Ethan nodded. "Right where everyone can remember how one simple bowl of soup can change everything." Lily watched the steam rise from their bowls, curling and dancing in the porch light. Each spiral seemed to carry fragments of their shared story. The bitter cold of that first night, the warmth of trust rebuilt, the strength of truth finally spoken in the light. Eleanor rested her hand on the porch rail, her wedding ring catching the light. "You know what I love most about soup?" she asked, her voice soft with memory. "It's meant to be shared. Even when you think you're running low, there's always enough if you're willing to make room at the table." The words settled over them like a benediction. Maddie added a few more lines to her drawing, while Ethan helped Eleanor to a second serving. The porch swing swayed gently, marking time like a metronome of peace. The spring night deepened around them, stars appearing one by one. Steam continued rising from their bowls, carrying their quiet laughter and comfortable silences upward. Each curl of vapor seemed to promise that second chances weren't just for their small group on the porch, but for anyone willing to open their door on a stormy night. From somewhere down the street, a neighbor's wind chimes added their silver notes to the evening. The soup's warmth and the porch light's glow created a circle of belonging that felt both old as memory and fresh as tomorrow's dawn. Lily watched the steam rise from their bowls into the cool night air. Each wisp carried skyward the simple truth they'd discovered, that love, like soup, grows stronger when shared, and that every porch light left on is a promise kept. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Lily Hart, I hand-picked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.